Hey there, everybody. Jimmy here with To the Top Crane. I don't know who all we got watching. Trying to figure out what YouTube has done here. They've changed things around a little bit, and it's kind of difficult to navigate when you don't do it every day. So I'm having to use YouTube's webcam feature now instead of Hangouts. Videos by Al. How are you doing? Who else we got here? We got 3 people watching so far. We got 2 thumbs up. But I hadn't done a live stream for about 3 weeks now, other than at the American Royal the other day. And like I said in that video, if you guys couldn't hear me, if you get the opportunity to make it to the American Royal, definitely go check it out. So Videos by Al says, how do? So how do you do Videos by Al? Also, we added a new sticker up there in the top corner right by the Titan Crane shirt. That is for Bullhorn Barbecue. He's one that invited me down to hang out at the American Royal. He's an employee of Tadano America and works in their parts department. So I've talked to him on the phone. I'd never met him in person until Friday. So that was a good time. You guys, if you get the opportunity, go check that out. Also, what do we got coming up? I have got a ton of footage to edit. I've still got cell phone tower footage to edit. I've got bridges. I've got house videos to edit. But I'm trying to bounce things around a little bit so you guys aren't seeing the same thing over and over again. That way it just kind of breaks the monotony of, hey, Jimmy's going to pick up a house. Next video, oh, Jimmy's picking up another house. So I'm trying to keep it where it's interesting. Oh, Videos by Al says good. We've been missing the storms. Well, that's good. Tomorrow we got an interesting job coming up. We got to take the big crane out, put 2 lines on it. So I'll have the main and the auxiliary winch reeved, and we got to pick up, I think, 4 or 5 tanks. And they're not like horizontal propane tanks or anhydrous tanks. These are going to be vertical tanks that we've got to pick them up with the main, drop the whip down, grab the bottom of it, tail them so we can lay them out. Like they start out like this, tail them so we can lay them out flat, and then set them on the ground. So G4 Outdoors, how are you doing, Randy, with G4 Outdoors? I caught just a little bit of that video earlier, and his new intro is funny. I don't know where I'm going to find that part. I've got that trim unit apart for Andy's boat. He's got a 50-horse Mercury outboard with power trim, and the gland blew up on it. Like where the rod comes through the hydraulic cylinder on the gland, it blew the seal out and blew the top of the gland out, and I'm having a heck of a time finding that part. 45 Nuts, how are you doing? Plaza Towing, how are you doing, Trent? Andy B. Mike Manfred, how are you doing, Mike? Tell Charles I said hello. Real McCoy, how are you doing? So this new layout, it's kind of a love-hate thing. It's on YouTube Studio Beta. And before I would have like 3 or 4 different windows open so I could see who was chatting and whatnot. But they've kind of integrated it all into one over here. But I haven't figured out how to navigate all of it yet. Videos by Al asked, did G-Force train derail last week? I hope not. If it would have, I think I probably would have heard about it. But Zach Porter, how are you doing? Says hi from Texas. G4, how was the barbecue? The American Royal was amazing. Randy, if you've never been there, you and Andy need to go over there. Anthony Ray says, good evening from Georgetown, Kentucky. Well, good evening from Northwest Missouri. Oh, G-Force is not mine, close to it, though. So that was almost your train that derailed, Randy? That would be no good. So we've got 19 people watching. JDS Weather First, Brewer, Maine, News and Events. Good evening from Maine. Well, good evening from Missouri. Thanks for stopping in, JDS. How are you doing? Jim Harris says, hey, from North Carolina. How are you doing, Jim Harris? And if you guys wouldn't mind at some point, either do it on here or I may ask people to do it on one of the upcoming videos. I'm curious what everybody's career is. So it'd be interesting to me to know what kind of people are watching the content. Like, I know I've got some crane operators. I know I've got some retired crane operators, some heavy equipment operators. I've got railroaders, fishermen. But it would be interesting to see who does what. Videos by Al says sawmill, so he must work at a sawmill or be a sawmill operator. Placid tongue, he's a couch potato. And Trent, have you thought any more about what we were texting back and forth about the other day? Anthony Ray, skilled maintenance. West Coast Kenny's a crane operator. G4, I know he's a railroader, says we've had 5 derailments in our territory in the last couple of weeks. Precision railroading at its finest. I don't call that very precision. Catra, equipment rigger or entertainment rigger. Oh, Real McCoy, sawmill owner, almost retired from North Carolina. Math DJ. How are you doing, Math DJ? Degrees in mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, quality of business. David Fisher's a roll-off truck driver from Farmland, Indiana. It's Plaza Towing. He says, yes, sir, we'll text you about that. Don't want to ruin it. Trent and I with Plaza Towing, Trent with Plaza Towing and I are working on a little something. So, and I'm not going to divulge it, but just know that he and I are working on something to throw out there. So, 45 nuts, steam plant engineer. Mike Bradley says hello from southeastern Indiana, grain hauler. How are you doing, Mike Bradley? So we've got just a kind of a mixture of everybody. And it's really neat to me. I think, I find my job kind of mundane because I do it every day. And so I picture or envision in my head a bunch of people sitting in cubicles watching my content because they're stuck behind a computer. Andy B's truck driver. Matt DJ, howdy, did you take down Granny's video? I went looking for it and did not see it. I did take that down. It was generating a lot of negativity, and I don't really want this channel to have a bunch of negativity on it. So I censored myself. And then also, you guys will find this amusing. That live stream I did for 14 minutes from the American Royal. As soon as I got home, I got notification that someone is filing copyright claim on that video because of the background music. Even though, you can hear the music, but you can't really hear the music, and it wasn't the subject of the video. So I, in turn, turned around and filed I forgot whatever you call it. Filed something against their copyright claim. So right now it is being deliberated. Matt DJ says, I think that was a good decision to take it down. I think so too. It was pretty controversial, and I don't mind some controversy, but I don't like the negativity, and along with the controversy came the negativity. 45 Nuts says, I'm now stuck behind a computer editing a video. G4 Media, I'm a videographer. So G4 Media, if you guys don't know, and if any of you guys follow G4 Outdoors, G4 Media is Randy and Andy taking on their own company, doing weddings, events, stuff like that. So dabbling in the world of videography. Doug Ward worked with several concrete pumpers. Those guys are good at controlling a moving crane device. The thing with concrete pump operators is they can't feel what the machine's doing. They're just kind of watching it, run it by remote. But I got another idea of something that I was going to throw at you guys and get your feedback on it. Well, we've got almost 30 people watching. Just to kind of mix things up a little bit on the channel. And I want to keep it pretty well focused on the construction side or the crane side of the construction industry. But it seems like the jobs that we do are consistently the same stuff with a strange thing thrown in every now and then. It's houses, tanks, air conditioning units, a tower once a year. Thank God it's not more often than that, and whatnot. So I'm gonna try to throw some more maintenance stuff in. We've got to service the big crane here in about 70 hours, and it's going to be pretty in depth. I'm going to change all the oil in the planetaries. I'm going to change all the oil in the gearboxes, change the oil in the winches, grease the boom inside and out. So we're going to get some footage of that. But I also have acquired a new toy, and I thought about I bought a motorcycle, and so I'm thinking about sticking a camera on it and just doing some random rides around where I live and kind of give you guys a peek into where I grew up and kind of the area I live in. Maybe give you guys a little bit more access to who I am as a person. And we've also got a lot of history in the area. So I thought maybe I'd break that up into some different videos if you guys want to watch me just ride around town and record some stuff. URL Tower, hello all. That must be a new name for a channel. Nebraska 44x4, saw you were at the Speedway Saturday working on the railroad here in KC, and yesterday was my day off. I would have went over to BSU, didn't see the video till last night. We weren't there until, or we were there on Friday. Josh Wellner, how are you doing? Says trying to get the kids to bed. I'll check back with you. All right, I'll probably run this for a couple hours. So, URL Tower. I was NERM. Changed the email tag name, and that changed it here. That'll do it. But yeah, so I bought a scooter. Just it's nothing fancy. Just something to ride back and forth to work on, play around on. It's a toy. But I thought I'd shoot a little video on it. Show you guys a little bit of the area that I'm in. So let me know what you guys think of that. Oh, G4 Outdoors is having a conversation with NERM. Rails 19, greetings from Western Colorado. How are you doing, Rails? Or Rails? Ray LZ. Plaza towing, I approve as long as you lift it. Lift the motorcycle? I could pick the motorcycle up with one of our little Brodersons. It's not a very big bike. I bought a Honda Sabre. And don't hate on me for not buying a Harley. I'll tell you guys, I'll tell you why I didn't buy a Harley. One, I'm not really in a position to where I can tell my wife, hey, I'm going to go spend $25,000 on a motorcycle. So I didn't buy a Harley because of that reason. And also, I basically stole this Honda Sabre. I got it for what I felt was a pretty good price. It's 2010 with less than 9,000 miles on it. Zach Porter, have I ever been called to assist with any heavy haul wrecks? We got put on standby for one a few years ago. A guy ran a 90-ton crane off in a ravine, and they thought we were going to have to go set the big crane up in the middle of a highway and lift it up out of there. But they ended up getting it out with a couple big rotators. So I haven't actually worked a wreck with the big crane. Got put on standby for a guy climbing a tower, too. That's in one of the videos from not too long ago. That big crane, it would be a chore to mobilize and go set up in the middle of a highway to clean up a wreck. It would have to be something pretty significant. And I mean, there's a couple big rotators in the area that I'm sure that if they couldn't handle it, they would call us. But generally, those guys can get it cleaned up. So I'm trying to decide what to edit next. I've still got a bunch more footage from that tower, but I'm thinking I'm going to throw a bridge video together from that one that we did where we had to put the bridge down in the riverbed. I'll throw that in there and just kind of mix things up a little bit. So McKinney asks, is the 750 or the big 1100? It's a 1300. So it's a 2010. It's a 1300 fuel injected. Mike Bradley said, I'm not a motorcycle rider, but I'd watch. So some of the history, if anybody on here is a history buff, we've got Jesse James' house in the area. The Pony Express was started right here in the area. So I'll do some ride bys on some of that and maybe stop and get some footage of that kind of stuff if you guys want to see it. Anthony Ray, they can call Rotator Ron if all else fails. Ron is 6 hours away, so that would be a pretty hefty recovery bill to have Ron come up here. But I think I got a picture of the old scooter on my phone. It's a pretty clean bike. Maybe I don't have a picture of it. Oh, yeah, I think I do. So we'll see if we can get the focus on this. It's nothing fancy, just a focus there. It kind of focused. Let's see. Nebraska 4x4 used to have a Victory Hammer, loved it, but got scared with other idiot drivers, sold it. And I mean, I can see that. I definitely ride with a lot of caution. Jim Harris, a long time ago, sewer and water, curb and gutter, rough grade roads, next structural steel, precast concrete, then residential, electrical, commercial, computer, and laser printer. Jim Harris has quite the pedigree. You have dabbled in all of it. So McKinney says, yeah, thanks. I have Yamaha Raider 113 1900 cc. That's a pretty big one. Drew Bradley says, hey, live show. How are you doing, Drew? Thanks, Skinny McKinney. Jim Harris says, next, the kitchen bath remodeling, then access control. Holy smokes. Andy B, you going to start doing handstands? No handstands for this guy. I don't have the physique for that. Gotcha said, Jim, I just sent you some pics of what I thought was really cool wrap job on the crane we used this summer. Let me see if I can find those pics. Let's see. Come on, phone. Show images. Technology is not being my friend today. Jim Harris retired when I got an offer of the property I inherited, moved to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and went fishing. I don't blame you. If I could fish every day for the rest of my life, that is what I would be doing. And that is a cool wrap on there, Contra. That is. Let's see if I can get this to come up. It's kind of a dark picture, but oh, come on, get rid of the glare. Focus. That's pretty neat stuff there. It's wrapped in an American flag. Thanks for sharing that. That's pretty neat. All right, Walter. Hi, Jimmy. You get full barbecue like camera on the ball you did doing cell tower. And that camera on the ball thing, I've got more footage of that too. We had a camera on there before we topped that tower out when I was setting kind of the intermediate pieces. So I've got about another 30 minutes of footage from the camera on the ball. It's just not as high up as topping that tower out. So I'll dig through some of that. There'll probably be 3 more videos of that cell tower. I got a lot of footage on it. And that bridge job will probably be 2 or 3 videos. It was a 3-day job, so there's a lot of footage from it. And I'm really surprised that cell tower hasn't gone semi-viral. I mean, that, just my opinion, I think that is some of the best footage that I have gotten on any of my videos, was that aerial view looking down from over 300 feet up. So I don't know if YouTube's just not suggesting it, if there's a lot of competition for it. The only way to get it out there is if you guys go back and click on it and just share the crap out of it and like it and all that stuff, and then that would help give it a boost. But I was surprised. Let me see where that's at right now. 4,000 some views, I think. I really figured that one would hit 35 or 40,000 views. That's only got 3,400 views, which was pretty shocking to me. David Rigoni, how are you doing? This is on the Great Cell Tower video. Was that a special jib or just a regular one? That was the regular swing away jib with the 4 inserts that we have for that crane. They were designed for that crane. So it turns that 43-foot jib into 122 feet of jib. McKinney says, was that a link belt that they had wrapped? That looked like a Grove. Let me look at it again. Yep, that's a Grove. I'm gonna see if I can get this to show up better. So I'm gonna zoom in on the cab. It's a Grove truck crane. It's a pretty neat rig. Von Heels, how are you doing? Says, what does your capacity look like when you're picking with full extension and the jib right near the crane? So the configuration that I was in, I had 186 feet of main boom out, which the total main boom length on that crane is 197, but I had 186 feet out, and then I had 122 feet of jib. And the reason why I did that is it actually gives me 200 pounds more capacity at that boom angle. So I was good for 5,300 pounds working off of that jib. If I would have switched to 197 feet of main, it makes it considerably more flexible, has more boom deflection, and it reduces the capacity by 200 pounds. And really, 200 pounds is 200 pounds. Plaza Towing, any dreams, aspirations to move into bigger and better cranes, or happy where you are now? I'll probably just ride it out where I am. I mean, that 200-ton Tadano is a pretty big crane, and the company I work for, they treat me really well. They're probably not going to buy another crane anytime soon. So Von Heel said, my only criticism of the camera on the ball video was the beginning of it. I know, and when we were standing that tower piece up, we had to use really short rigging to keep the hook basically at the top of the tower, because the way I had the boom configured, we were really tight on headroom. And when we were picking the piece up, the lightning rod on top of the tower actually rotated a little bit, and the lightning rod bumped the camera and it rotated it some. The plus side to that is it allows you to not only see down the tower, but you can see the horizon. And so it gives you a better perspective of actually how high it is versus just looking straight down. But I agree, it did kind of skew the picture a little bit, and at that point there was no fixing it. It was go to the top with it, and the tower guys, once they got bolted up and climbed to the top to cut it loose, one of the tower guys actually straightened the camera out for me. So McKinney says, thank you, Jimmy Grove is what my dad owned, 80-ton and a 14-ton. Yeah, Von Heel said, yeah, that is kind of what I wanted to get you to point out, was that even though it's a 200-ton crane and near the crane body, your capacity is not very high, fully or nearly fully extended. It drops off fast. Now, off a main boom, it will still pick a lot of weight a long ways away. I've got some air conditioning units coming up next month. I think they're 12,000 pounds, and it's going to be about 145 or 150 foot radius. So I looked at my charts the other day at 100 and I think it's at 145 feet. I'm still good for 15,200 pounds, which is quite a bit stretched all the way out there. Jim Harris, you don't want the story about when we shook out the steel too far away from where we set up the crane. You can lay it on us. I've had that happen, and I've had people move stuff closer to me. And I've had people move stuff further away from me because sometimes people will put stuff too close to the crane. I mean, we can only boom up so far. Nate M, how are you doing? He says, "What up?" Just kidding. How are you, sir? Good to see you live. Hope everything's going good with you, Nate. Jim Harris had to drag the ball with a choker to the hitch of the welding truck about 100 feet from the flat-out boom. That is no good. That is one thing I will not allow to happen. Helicopter says it's kind of hard to see, but there's claw marks on the boom of the crane showing the flag through the flake metal plating. I'll have to look closer here in a little while. Nerm said, not sure what happened. A crane crew tipped over 100 ton doing tree work in Tallahassee, Florida. I think I saw that. And tree work is sketchy work. I can probably tell you what happened. Chris DeBow, how are you doing, Chris DeBow? Von Hill said you would not want the boom at 90 degrees anyway, then it's just a flagpole. That's a fact. I was boomed up just over 81 degrees set in that tower. That's pretty straight up and down. Jim Harris, it was the early 70s. I guess back then you kind of just did what you had to do. Cranes were built significantly different back in the early 70s. Nathaniel Lee, how are you doing? John Warren, good evening to you, sir. Chris DeBow, I'm doing good. Glad you're doing well. Nate M, same thing happened with crane company in California. Tree cutter versus crane operator argued, picked a load, and rolled down a hill. So if I've got any arborists watching right now, or any arborists that will watch this in the future, the guy sitting in the seat makes the decision on how big of pieces you're picking. I don't care who's running the chainsaw. The guy sitting in the seat bears the responsibility once that piece is cut. So that operator makes the call on that. There shouldn't be an argument. Dirty Diggin, how are you doing? Nathaniel Lee, I'm doing well. Everything's going good here. Andy B, those guys on top of that tower was high enough to hunt ducks with a rake. I saw that comment, and that was funny. Dirty Diggin, no food coma after the American Royal. Von Heel says, I still think it'd be a great video. Somehow you and Ron could team up to show the physics difference between the way a rotator boom is designed to handle loads and a traditional crane. I could talk to Ron, and we could maybe see about collaborating on something to do with that, or I could even do it with Trent with Plaza. They've got a rotator. Isaac Hillstrom, are arborists allowed to ride the ball since tree work falls into its own category? There are cases when arborists are allowed to ride the ball. I do believe, I would have to go back through all of my OSHA stuff, but I do believe arborists are the only one that are allowed. Now, other trades can still use a bosun seat, but an arborist can actually hook himself to the hook and ride the ball. Von Hill said, yeah, either way, Von Hill's the booms are designed differently to handle loads, and I'm not sure everyone knows how they differ. So I can dive a little deeper into that right now on it if you want me to talk about it, Von Heels. Crane booms are very strong in one direction. They're not strong laterally, where rotator booms, I think, are pretty much the same strength at all angles. What would inhibit side pulling with a rotator, I do believe, is the rotating mechanism. But a crane will not tolerate side loading very much. It's a no-no. And realistically, if I had 197 feet of main out and had a heavy load on the hook, you could probably bring that crane down with a 3-pound hammer if you hit it in the side of the boom in the wrong spot. Those crane booms it's like sticking straws inside each other. I mean, they're hollow pieces of steel tubing, basically, that are fabricated and welded together. And the steel on the side is not as strong as the steel that is curved underneath and some of the steel that's on top. But those booms on the rotators, they're pretty thick material all the way around, but they're also short, and they're designed to handle a little bit of side pulling, I would think. I don't know if Trent with Plaza is still watching. He can confirm or deny that. But Isaac Hillstrom, the only side load allowed on a crane is dynamic loading from a freely suspended load. That is a fact. And even then, some of that can become extreme. If you get a person that has a heavy load and they're swinging it around like a psycho, even the dynamic loading from that can bring a crane down. Nathaniel Lee says, have you ever seen Bucyrus Erie's 1850 Brutus? I have not. Dirty Diggins says, I know Ron Pratt tries to keep a side loading to a minimum on the rotator. And Nate M, side loading a boom will make it look like a crumpled piece of paper. Chris DuBois is going to Walt Disney next year. That's the world's largest human trap designed by a mouse, but I hear it's pretty neat. Universal Studios was neat. Nebraska 4x4, I don't like side loading anything, excavators, boom, skid loaders, anything. John Warren says, I've heard Ron say no side when possible. And, a wrecker is designed completely different than a crane in the sense that its tasks are different than what a crane is. Like those rotators, they're designed to pull a whole bunch of weight, and they can also pick up a lot of weight. They just can't pick it up very far for themselves. Oh, there's Trent with Plaza Towing. Says rotators, while they can handle side loading, they are truly not intended for this. The boom lets go if you side load it too much to protect from stripping the ring gear and or swing gear. Nerm says, time for the 49 watching and only 16 thumbs up. I can't see how many thumbs up there is. Oh, yeah, I can. It's up here in the top left. And that's kind of what I figured, Trent. I figured those booms are strong enough to take a fairly significant amount of side loading, but the slewing mechanism probably won't allow it. Crane booms, they will buckle. And I mean, well, they can buckle from being overloaded too, but side loading a crane is just a bad decision all the way around. If you're picking up something that has a lot of surface area, you can generate enough wind load to create an excessive side load on a crane, enough to probably fold the boom up. People don't understand just how fragile that stuff is. Katra, we had a crane breakdown on us doing one of our jobs. Let's see. Oilman told me the computer lost track of the hydro ram inside the arm for pushing out the extensions, was down almost 10 hours. I've seen them down for months because of stuff like that. It's that automated stuff that goes on inside the boom is pretty amazing. And that computer is handling a lot of calculations in a very short period of time. Any one sensor goes bad in it, and that computer gets angry and will lock it out. Isaac Hillstrom exactly said that's how Big Blue went down. Note Flame Piano said Let's view the deleted message. Hey, mind helping my channel out? I don't know what I can do to help your channel out other than I just said your channel name on here. There's 52 people watching. Purple is a number. No, I would not consider that. There's two reasons why I wouldn't consider that. One is I've been married for over 20 years. Two, you're 14 years old. Not a good question to ask. Nerm got it. Isaac Hillstrom, how long have I been running crane? I've been around heavy equipment and cranes since I was 18 years old. Been in the seat operating pretty regularly for off and on for the last 10 years and consistently for about the last 8. Von Heels, any interesting projects coming out of the shop these days? As in, like, maintenance stuff, mechanical stuff, rebuilding stuff, crane work. Terry Schaefer says, keep up the good work. Thanks for that. Nate M., do a lot of companies run older cranes? Is it beneficial in any way? Nate M., there is some benefit to running some older rigs. It depends on the crane. Running the older cranes, typically when you go to buy them, they're not as expensive. They use more common parts generally, but there are some old cranes out there, and we used to actually own one. We had a 150-ton Tadano that was the last one in the country, and getting parts for it was almost impossible. So it went to Ritchie Brothers and got sold. But there is some benefit, especially when you're first starting out, to buying an older machine because they're considerably cheaper. However, with a new machine, you got new parts, a lot of product support, stuff's readily available for it. Von Heels, mechanic stuff, home or at work. I've got to service that big crane. I'll probably do it next month. So there'll be a lot of mechanical stuff, not necessarily like diagnosing, troubleshooting, but I'll be spending a lot of time underneath it. So we'll get some footage underneath gearboxes, drive lines, stuff like that. Blue Moon says good night to everyone. Katra, our problem was he was done with his side of the job. He had to get off the field, but it was hard locked. He could not even get it down to clear the site. That's no good. Plaza Towing says, may have talked about this in a prior video, but I did not see. Can you touch upon the business end of quoting, assessing a job, and generating a lift plan and determining the crane you will use? Okay, so it's kind of a process, and I've wanted to try to record it, but it's really kind of a process. Sometimes it takes days. We've actually done some jobs that the planning took a month. Step one really is find out what your piece weighs. What do they want us to lift, and how much does it weigh? So, for instance, the last one we did that took over a month, it was for a company that is very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? In-depth on safety stuff. So they take all of their information and actually send it to an engineering company, and they engineer absolutely everything to do with the pick. When you get to that job site, there is no changing anything outside of what that pick plan shows. But step one, figure out how much you're picking up or what it is, how many pick points it's got. Do we have to do a single point pick, 2-point pick, 4, 6, 8, 10? We've done 14, 16-point picks. And then once we know how much we're lifting up, we want to know how far away do we have to set it down or pick it up, because that's going to determine the size of crane used. Our 100-ton crane can handle fairly heavy loads out to 40, 50 feet. Once you get out past that, if you're dealing with anything significant, then it's going to take the bigger crane to handle it. So once we know how much the piece weighs, how far away it's going to be set, we ask about site conditions. If there's any specifics that have to be involved, do they need extra riggers? Do we need special rigging? all of that. But I guess I need to back up a little bit. Part of what goes into that is as soon as we find out how much we're picking and how far we're setting it, we get load charts out. We start comparing load charts. Which crane do we need? How much counterweight? Which block do we need to use? How many parts of line? What's our deductions for rigging? What's our deductions for, the stowed jib, all that good stuff. So once we have all of that information, then we can start quoting a price. And a lot of times we'll go out and look at the job beforehand. So hopefully, Trent, I touched on everything that you were asking in a very condensed fashion. If you want me to dive deeper into it, I'll see what I can do with that. Katra put the 6-hour job over a day behind. That cell phone tower job was only supposed to be 6 to 8 hours, and the crane was there for 2.5 weeks because of weather. Isaac Hillstrom, what is my opinion on NCCCO testing? I think crane certification is a good thing. However, they need to be cautious on how they're doing it now. Since OSHA crammed it down everybody, well, they didn't really cram down everybody's throat. Everybody knew it's been coming for years. And realistically, forklift certification has been a requirement for a long time. And cranes are significantly more complex than a forklift. But I think what they've done now is OSHA kicked it down the road for so long. They just kept setting the requirement date back and back and back. And people never, I think it kind of caught people off guard. I don't think they were actually expecting it to be incepted this time around. So now what we've got is a bunch of operators out there that have been operating for 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, that aren't certified. And companies are pushing people through like cattle. So there's companies out there offering these crane certifications, and they're running them through like cattle. And granted, there's a lot of great operators going through it, but there's also some people coming in that are new to the crane world that are diving straight into this crane certification program, going through a 3-day class, getting their crane certs and going out and jumping in a crane on a job site, which to me is a recipe for disaster. So I think it's necessary. I absolutely think it's necessary. People should demonstrate knowledge and ability to operate a complex machine like that. They should have to, and they should have to be certified to do so. I think their prerequisites need to be a little firmer. I know for a fact, and I've seen it in our own training center, guys that were apprentices that were drawn towards cranes and got some time around cranes on a job site. And, you got apprentices turning out with a crane certification, and they haven't really set up a crane on a job site. They haven't been involved in everything it takes to make a crane operate safely. And that's where you run into disaster. So let me try to get caught up now. Kind of went off on a tangent there. Victor at Plaza Towing, just whatever the cost of renting the crane and the operator, I think. Von Heels, I think inspecting videos are just as interesting, perhaps even more so than pure fixing videos. And the Big Tadano, it just went through its annual inspection last month, and I didn't record it. It's kind of a lengthy process, but we'll do some inspection video when I'm doing the service on it. D. McDonald, how are you doing, D. McDonald? Says, hey, Jimmy, I have a technical question. Is it a good time? Lay it on me, D. McDonald. Von Heels, it is always good to see what goes into arriving at a plan. Victor, pounds per square inch on the ground, safety things like that, right? That makes a huge difference. Stability of a crane is paramount. And I drill this into people's heads that are just getting into the crane world and asking questions. Your setup on a crane is the most important part of it, because once that crane's set up, if it's set up incorrectly, everything you do from that point on is incorrect. So setup is paramount. I mean, it's all super important, but when you're setting the crane up, it better be 100% right. And then When you put the counterweights on, it's got to be 100% right. When you enter the information into the computer, that's got to be 100% right. All of that stuff is equally important, but setup is step one. And if that is not done correctly, everything you do from there on is incorrect. I'm going to probably have to skip over some of these comments, but Andy B says, I can't remember how much hydraulic fluid does your crane hold. It's, I don't remember off the top of my head how much. We changed the hydraulic oil in the upper. I don't remember exactly how many gallons it was. It was $4,200 worth. NERM said, your onboard scale system, where are the load cells located? How often do you need to recalibrate? And how accurate do you feel the system is for what you're lifting? The load cells are actually transducers that are mounted in the boom cylinder hydraulic circuit. So they monitor how much pressure is inside that boom cylinder. It takes that figure and works through a computer algorithm with your boom length, radius, all that stuff, attachments and whatnot, to determine the load that is hanging there. It's pretty accurate. I'd say it's accurate within a couple 100 pounds, and that's within its margin of error. That's within your specs on your load charts. So, but it's pretty accurate. Okay, so Von Hill says, another thing I'm not sure you've touched on before was the motivation behind using the small round mats on top of the large mats as seen in the cell tower. So that ground was uneven, and you only have so much hydraulic cylinder that you can run out on the jacks. So in order for me to get the crane level, I had to stack those round mats on top of my big rectangular mats to have enough height to get the crane level. So the ground was sloped like this. I had the crane sitting on it like this, and that's why I had the round mats on top of the big mats. Victor gave Trent a kudos there. This is Plaza Towing. If you want to read that one, Trent. Zach Porter, have I ever lifted any construction equipment into buildings? I have. Jennifer Saunders, your crane lifting weights in kilograms or pounds? It's United States. We do it all in U.S. pounds and U.S. tons. D. McDonald, finally getting down to your question here. So watching the cell tower video on other channels, I've seen relatively huge looking lattice booms and luffing jibs. They're installed horizontal and then lifted by the boom. Okay. The forces seem ridiculous. The cylinder is pushing horizontally in opposition to the pivot point. Seems like massive forces involved. Can you comment? I don't know how much force or how much pressure is inside. Well, I can kind of give you an idea. The hydraulic cylinder on the hydraulic luffer on that 200 ton, the pressure inside of it's going to vary from 0 to about 250 bar. Now I'll have to convert. Let's do some converting. Pressure. So 250 bar is 3,625 psi. So 3,625 psi inside that hydraulic cylinder at any given time when you're luffing it up or down. And it generates, that long jib generates a lot of force on that boom. When you're booming up with it, with the boom fully retracted, so you just get all that 122 feet of jib put together, and you're booming it up for the first time before you start extending it out, the crane realizes an actual load from that jib. It reads on the scale of about 18,000 pounds if you take it out of rigging mode and just watch it and see what actual force that jib is generating on the crane. So when you're laid out flat and you're coming up with it until you get it to about 55 or 60 degrees, that crane is seeing a force of about 18,000 pounds from that jib. The jib doesn't weigh that much. It's Each section's 980 pounds. Each insert's 980, so there's 4 of those. We just rounded up to 4,000. And then the 43-foot swing away is 4,000. So the jib actually only weighs about 8,200 pounds, all 122 feet of it. But the leverage that it has on the crane, it makes the crane read 18,000 and some change. So yeah, there's a lot of forces there. That's why that jib doesn't do much unless it's boomed up quite a ways. And on the big crawler cranes and whatnot, on their hydraulic or on their luffers, their cable operated luffers, a lot of times they'll have stuff that sticks out the backside of the jib, the counter jib, that they can run ropes down, and it helps offset that, helps support it. But it's still a lot of force. The engineering involved in these modern cranes is unbelievable. Riley Jackson trying to become an operator. What do you think is best to have on a resume trying to get accepted for an apprenticeship from someone? Any equipment experience, mechanical experience, any of that stuff will help a long ways. Good work ethic. If you have any references to your good work ethic, that'll help. But it boils down to the more you know, the more you're worth. D. McDonald, the forces seem ridiculous. The cylinder is pushing horizontally in opposition to the pivot point. Oh, yeah, I already covered that. Victor said, how much weight can the real-life cranes of those models in the back lift at height? I would have to look at the load charts to actually determine, but the one that is closest to that wall is basically the same version of what I operate. So that's a 200-ton capacity. It's going to have almost identical charge to mine. I can pick 17,000 pounds. Well, technically I can't pick 17,000, but the jib, the 43-foot swing away, which is represented by what's on the tip of that, is good for 17,000. The single line pull on the crane is only 16,750, but I can pick 16,750 off of that jib. But it's all determined by boom lengths, counterweights, jib angle, all of that stuff. Victor makes a good point, Riley Jackson. A CDL will help a lot. Ricky Spanish, how are you doing? Says, did you like the show Frasier? I've never seen it. Dirty Diggin says, are you going to ICUEE in October? What is that? Banger Music, how are you doing? Says Banger Music TV, we have you streaming on our channel, being exposed and turned into a comedy. Over 2,000 people watching you now. To release name, you must read this. So you're going to hold me hostage on my own channel? That's funny. You can turn it into a comedy. I laugh at myself sometimes, so don't hang yourself up on that. Linda Sherman says, hi, Jimmy. Can you explain derating? Thanks. Love your videos. Derating. So derating for wind or derating for other things? If you could elaborate on that, I can probably answer your question a little better. Nathaniel Lee, can you do a review of your crane, Jimmy? So you want me to do like a walk around video review of that crane? Plaza Towing says, I put outrigger pads down on every lift, no reason not to. And that's a good habit to be in. The only time I don't put outrigger pads down on our crane is if I'm getting in and out of the dolly at our shop or doing something at our shop. And that the ground at our shop has had buildings and parking lots and all kinds of stuff on it since the 1800s. You'd be hard pressed to drive a 16-pin nail in the ground with a sledgehammer out there. That ground is so hard. But even then, I'm not picking anything except for maybe a piece of counterweight and moving it 20 feet. Anything over that, and I'm either putting round pads down or putting my big mats down. Von Heels, we have learned that on carpet, those models' capacity is negative the way they are currently configured. That's a fact. I set that one closest to the wall down here on the carpet one day, and it fell over. Isaac Hillstrom says, rather go to a right-of-work state like North Dakota. We're starving for good riggers. That would take us, that if I commented on all of that, it would take us into a great big political deal. I'm not going there. But good riggers and good operators can work anywhere. If you've got good work ethic and you're good at your job and you're a good crane operator or a good rigger, you will not have trouble finding work. Linda Sherman said, I saw the term derating in a discussion of outriggers. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can dive into some of that. I may have to grab one of those cranes real quick. Oh, Dirty Diggin said, ICUEE is an equipment and aerial show in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm probably not going to make it to that. Nathaniel Lee, I can do a walk-around video and do a review on that crane. So let me grab this crane back here, and we'll see if we can answer some questions or answer Linda's question. It's going to take me a second to get all this taken care of. Actually, I'll just drop the rope off the side. The thread. Try not to punch a hole in my ceiling here. Okay. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Someone hit a message. Espion and Glacian Studio and live streaming. I'm lonely. Sorry about that. Motorhead 1, Con Expo Vegas. I'm still planning on making it to Con Expo. Okay, so we're going to talk about derating because of outriggers. I just pulled my outrigger beam clear out of this poor crane. We're going to need a mechanic. So the way these outriggers are set right now, that would be considered full span. The crane can be configured with a mid-span outrigger if you don't have enough room to get around something, or if you got an obstacle in the way. You can actually pull an outrigger in and set it like so. However, doing that, your crane capacity is derated because your outrigger footprint isn't as wide, so you're not as stable. And actually on this crane and the one that the real life crane that I operate, if I have these weights on, which these are the kidney weights or the wing weights, if I have these also installed on the crane, I cannot put it in a mid-span outrigger mode. And that's what this would be called, as mid-span. If I did and boomed up, the crane would fall over backwards if I was over the side. So if I had all of these like so in mid-span and had these weights on and boomed up with the boom retracted, the crane would just tip over backwards. So you can have derates for that. So this would be mid-span with them all the way out, would be full span outriggers, and that would give you your full chart for a full outrigger span. Now, another thing that you derate for is wind. So when you have wind involved, like with the crane that I operate, once it gets to 23 miles an hour, 24 miles an hour, I have to derate the crane to 50% of its capacity. Once it gets to 27 miles an hour, I have to derate it to 30% of its capacity. And then once it gets to 33 miles an hour, 34 miles an hour, I got to shut the crane off. So hope that answers your question. We're not going to set this on the carpet. We have determined that stability on my carpet with this crane is not exactly the best. Wow, someone must be on here starting some trouble, it looks like. Let me take a look and see what, I'm kind of curious. I want to see what that fella had to say. Oh, thanks for taking care of that, John. Lakeside Ranch, how are you doing, Doug? Hope all is well with you. McKinney said, Jimmy, where do you find the models of your cranes and others? These come from Tadano. You can order them right off of the Tadano website. You go to, I think it's www.tadano something, and it will take you to their website, and then you can order these die-cast cranes. They're expensive. You can find some of them on eBay as well. Linda Sherman, you're welcome for the explanation. Thanks for asking a good question. David Rigoni said, do you tell the computer the, not sure what your sentence didn't complete there, David? So McKinney looks like he's heading out. Said, Jimmy, have a safe week. Be blessed. Thank you. Thanks for being part of the channel and watching and tuning in and asking good questions. And Katra said, could you give an example of where being closer but derated is better than a little further away and full rating? I will, if at all possible, I will always configure the crane to have the most capacity because that gives me the best margin for error if something goes wrong. So let's say I'm working in a parking lot and there's containers or something stacked up in this parking lot, and there's only 26 feet of room in there, and I need to pick up one of the containers. I could go mid-span and roll in there and in that 26-foot area and grab one of those shipping containers, versus like if I had this set up in unstable ground or soft ground, or had trouble getting a truck into me, but would have full width outrigger span and whatnot. So I would choose to set up in a way that makes it safer and easier to get the crane set up. Hopefully that answered your question. It would be kind of hard to explain, I guess, without doing a video of it. But Dirty Digging said, sun is down a bit. Got some work to do in the driveway. Catch you later. Hey, thanks for stopping in and being part of all this. Okay, so David Rigoni asked, does the wind speed indicators do the D rate? No. The wind speed indicator, the anemometer on the end of the boom only tells me what the wind speed is. I have to take that information and act accordingly. Okay, Von Hills asked, just an extension to your explanation. If any of the outriggers are at mid-span, you have to use the mid-span chart, even if if the others are at full span. On most all cranes, you have to work specifically off of your mid-span chart. The newer cranes, this Tadano, the Lee Bears and stuff, they give you kind of an active load chart on your LMI, which is your computer, your load moment indicator. So let's say I have 3 of the outriggers set at full span and the left front corner is set at mid span. It will give me full capacity all the way around those other 3. And basically what you end up with, let me get the whiteboard. This would be easier. And yes, I'm wearing my flannel pajama pants. You guys are asking some good questions tonight. Mike Bradley's got to head out. Says, have a great week, early morning. Thank you for your time and sharing the videos. Hey, thanks for watching. Okay, so remember, everybody, I draw like a kindergartner. Okay, so if I got the crane set up like this, here's the slewing ring. My load chart, according to the LMI, the way it will calculate it on the fly, is my chart will look something like like that. So the computer automatically knows that outrigger is not at full span, and it knows to reduce my capacity over that one corner. There you go. Kyle Austin said it right there, Vario base. And that's what it's called. Some companies call it different stuff, but it is a Vario base. Let's see, make sure I'm not missing anybody. King 2042, how are you doing? Jim Harris is heading out. Thanks for watching, Jim Harris. Motorhead, exactly right. He said old cranes don't have it. Noltec, how are you doing, Noltec? But the Vario base, the computer will compensate for that mid-span outrigger. Now, if I am running an older crane that doesn't compensate for that, doesn't know what's going on, anytime you have an outrigger at mid-span, you have to enter into the computer your mid-span information. And what it does is the computer only gives you a mid-span load chart, regardless of if you've got the other three outriggers at full span. So that's very important for people to understand. They're breaking into the crane world. If they're in an older crane and you have one outrigger, even one outrigger pulled in 3 inches to clear an obstacle or a curb or whatever, you have to use your mid-span chart, and you have to enter into the computer the mid-span information. Now, on these newer cranes that have Vario base on them, I can tell that the computer automatically knows what the outrigger span is set at. I can't go in and change it beyond what the computer has already calculated. It takes care of its outrigger span on its own. If I run an outrigger out to mid-span, it knows it's at mid-span. So there you have it. And it'll do the same thing if, let's say I've got full span on that side, but mid-span on this side. As long as I'm not putting the crane into a rearward stability issue, meaning I have a bunch of counterweight on it, and I've got the boom over here, and I've got a bunch of counterweight on this side. If I boom up too high, it could put the crane into a rearward stability issue where it can actually tip over backwards. The computer will stop me from doing that, but you also have to know what your maximum boom angle is for that configuration. But if I'm letting the Vario base take control, then it'll give me a chart like this. So it'll give me full capacity off this side, and then as I'm approaching this, it'll start reducing my capacity. And it's a very handy feature to have, because there are some times when you have to put the crane in a place that you can't get your outriggers all the way out, but you still need full capacity off of one side. So it's a very nice feature to have. But there you have it. What else can I draw for you guys that wouldn't be very good drawing? Nerm says, some of that whiteboard drawing would make a good t-shirt. Motorhead 1, don't trust computers solely. And that is also true. You have to know your machine and its capabilities, and you have to keep track of that. That's the LMI, or the computer in a crane, is a operational aid. It's not to replace the operator's brain. It is there to aid the operator in making decisions and calculations that pertain to the crane and what's getting picked up. Tim Miller says, hello from Kettering, Ohio. You have some great videos. Keep it up. Thanks for that, Tim. Linda Sherman, how much vertical range do the outriggers have on the 200-ton? Trying to think. The stroke on the front cylinders is less than the back. I'm thinking it's right around 18 inches on the front cylinders and probably right around 2 feet on the rears. Aerial Landscapes, what's up, everybody? How are you doing? Motorhead 1, go over dynamic effect. Dickard with Dave, how are you doing, Dickard with Dave? I will get to that in a second, Motorhead, but that's a good one to go off of. D. McDonald, at the gas station, you had to raise one side of the outriggers to level the crane. Never had to raise the entire crane an even amount to reach higher or clear an obstacle. I haven't had to do that on our big crane yet, but I have had to do that on cranes where you block it up a couple feet just because you need a few extra feet of tip height. Cooper Mishu, how are you doing? Nigel Ashworth, how are you? Motorhead 1 says tires must be off the ground. The way the standard is written is the tires cannot be bearing any weight. And the only way to know that they're not bearing any weight is they have to be clear of the ground. West Coast Kenny said my crane will stop if for some reason I try to swing over the short outrigger. Mine will as well. If you're out of the chart for the mid-span outrigger, it will alert you and stop you from going there. Okay, so dynamic loading. You can have dynamic loading in a couple different ways. You can have dynamic loading from wind. You can have dynamic loading from a load being picked up and it's shifting, booming down too fast, booming up too fast, swinging too fast. Dynamic is anything that pertains to movement. So let's say we've got a crane boom sticking up here. And we've got, I don't know, we'll just call it a trailer or a loading dock or whatever. We've got our cable coming down, and hopefully you guys can see all this. But let's say we got a load here. And we'll just call it we'll just say this is the back end of a semi-trailer. We'll put some non-round wheels under it, tires. So let's say we're picking this piece up and that truck driver gets a little ahead of himself and puts the horse up the cart's butt and pulls out. And then all of a sudden this piece drops. So let's say this piece originally weighs 2,000 pounds and you've got some slack in this rope. Well, the shock load or the dynamic load felt on the crane is going to be significantly more than the 2,000 pounds because this piece is dropping. That is your dynamic load. There's a lot of math involved in it, and I'm not going to get into all the math in the live stream on it. Same thing with swinging a load. If you were to swing this thing to the left and get that piece swinging really fast and then all of a sudden stop, and that piece swings out, as the piece swings out and reaches the end of its arc, it's going to side load or dynamically load the boom to the direction that the piece was swinging. It's all physics. It's no different than if you took a 2-pound dumbbell and put it on a rope and swung it and then stop it. That 2-pound dumbbell is going to feel a lot heavier than 2 pounds. Then that gets people in trouble. People don't understand the dynamic loads sometimes they're putting on their crane. And you can actually overload a crane dynamically without anything on the hook. Say you got all your boom ran out and you're booming down really fast and all of a sudden you stop. You can turn your crane over by doing that. Alex Williamson's Blind Adventures, how are you doing? Oh, Rails 19 said while you were whiteboarding, you missed a shout from Alex Williamson. So we got you now, Alex. Sorry for missing that. I was holding kindergarten art class over here. So, John Warren, hey, now don't make fun of them square-wheeled Swift drivers now. Plaza Towing's got to head out. Thanks for stopping in, Trent. Shoot me a message. We'll figure something out on what we were talking about. If you're up for doing it, I'm going to put the ball in your court on that. You're the one with almost 100,000 subscribers, and I'm sitting at, I don't know, under 8,000. So if that's something you want to do on your channel, I'm all for it. Von Heels makes good points as well. Before that even happens, if you started taking the load off the truck, would be putting stress on the boom in a way it was not intended to take the load. Alex Williamson's Blind Adventures, you are absolutely correct. Said I would assume that has something to do with G-forces and kinetic energy. Tim Miller, have you ever had a job where you had to stop and rethink it before going on? There's been a lot of jobs I've been on that you kind of start second guessing yourself, and you get the book out and you start looking at stuff again and just make sure that everything's the way it's supposed to be. And I've also stopped jobs for safety stuff. So, Mallory Jackson Smith, what kind of question is that? Absolutely not. Contra had to deal with that this summer. They sued a smaller crane. He only had 3,800-pound capacity. Tower was 33. Pulled to the cap and could not overcome the friction of the. Oh, I had to get 2x6 to pry them apart. Yeah, Motorhead 1, we talked about it earlier. No side loading. Alex Williamson's Blind Adventure says, no worries. I missed the beginning of that. Or I missed the beginning of that. Well, you can come back and watch the live stream from the beginning. Andy B, that's not nice. Von Heels, that's absolutely a fact. The best safety device in any piece of equipment is between your ears. And that's why crane cabs are so small. There's only room in there for an operator, a little bit of knowledge, and no room for an ego. D. McDonald, force equals mass times acceleration. David Rigoni asked, whatever happened to Thor? Thor is getting ready to get started to worked on, or I'm getting ready to start working on it again. So I kind of laid it up for the summer because it was too hot to be welding out in my garage after getting off work. And the last thing I want to do is be staring at the sun in my garage when it's 110 degrees. So now that it's starting to cool off, the hammer is going to get done. Thor's hammer will be done. We may be dropping it on stuff in the snow, but we are going to finish building that hammer, and we are going to destroy stuff with it. King 2042 are the brakes on the rope drum physical brakes, as in brake bands. They're actually brake discs with a Belleville washer that holds pressure on them. They're spring applied and hydraulically released. Linda Sherman, IRC, the initial gravitational force of sudden stop is roughly 10 times the object's weight and increases as it falls. Like it could be. I think that's about right. Matt Lee, and this is why, kids, you don't fall asleep during 8th grade science class, and you have to learn it from Jimmy. And I'm probably not the best science teacher. I don't know. I like teaching this kind of stuff. I like passing information along. I don't necessarily want this to be strictly a teaching channel, but I don't mind passing information along, just as long as everybody that watches and sees the information understands that there's a lot of times there's different ways to do things, and what applies to your particular situation may not be the same as what was applying to our situation. Basically, what I'm saying is a disclaimer stating that anything that I tell you guys, you use at your own risk. So that's probably easier than beating around the bush with it. Von Heels, that's a fact. I told people I worked with, if you don't feel safe or feel it is safe, it isn't, regardless of what a computer or book might say. Well, that guy's gone. Motorhead 1, old rigs or friction shoes. Yep. Tim Miller, what's the heaviest pick I've ever done? Who wants to answer that? Anybody that's been with the channel for quite a while? Anybody want to answer Tim Miller's question on the heaviest pick I've ever done? Noltec pulling monopole tree towers apart. Yeah, those can pop a little dynamic load. And pulling spuds out of like the barges and stuff on the river, that can generate some dynamic load. You got to creep up on that stuff. Book Nerd and Mason, did you work in the fields when I was younger? Like which fields? I've been in the construction and equipment industry since right out of high school. Victor, you ever picked grapes from a vine with your crane? No, and I was so mad at myself when we were doing that bridge job. I had the perfect opportunity to go fishing with the crane. If I would have had some fishing line, a hook, and some bait, we were set up in a riverbed where they'd built just kind of a little land base for us to put the crane on. And I could have swung over and sat there and fished for a while, and I didn't do it. I didn't have the stuff with me. I haven't picked 1 million pounds. With the Tadano that I'm currently in, the heaviest pick I've made was that big propane tank that was 129,000 pounds. That was the heaviest thing I've lifted with that crane so far. The heaviest thing I've ever picked with a crane was a 179,000 pound gas turbine generator shaft. Matt Lee, they taught us in CDL driving school that when you double your speed, you quadruple your hitting power. Probably goes the same when you drop something. Wind does the same thing. Every time you double the wind, you quadruple the wind force. Motorhead one to an 84-ton lift. That's a big one. It's a big transformer. Von Heels, there's a lot of truth to that too. He said he was also the person who would send people home if they got angry because an angry operator is not safe, in my opinion. And that is absolutely the truth. You got to be patient and not have a temper while you're sitting in that seat. There's too much at stake, too much liability, and there's too much at stake. I've had people earlier on when I started the channel up that were like, hey, you need to be more animated, or you're not very animated when you're in the crane. The reason why I'm not animated when I'm in the crane, well, I'm actually not really animated anyway, but that's no place to have like a logger wade style is in the crane cab. There's too much going on in there. There's way too much at risk there. So calm, cool, and collected is the only way to be in a crane cab. Book Nerd Mason, I've seen pics of someone that put a sitting lawnmower on a crane so they could trim bushes. I don't know that that's very legal, but I've seen similar stuff. David Rigoni said, you ever seen the video with all the crane booms collapsing like dominoes? Was that the hoist brake letting go? Typically, that's a structural failure of the boom. And if you're in a multiple crane pick, which is anything more than one machine, if one crane collapses, typically the rest of them will. It kind of depends. I've got some videos where I was setting some bridge beams with a really old, like tandem picking with a really old friction crane. If that crane dropped his end, it wouldn't take me down. It wouldn't break my boom. However, if you're making a big pick with 2 cranes or 4 cranes, that load, once one crane fails, that crane's load transfers to the other cranes next to it. And then those typically fail. And then it becomes a domino effect. Each crane that's still standing gets more and more load put on it until it finally just takes them all out. I watched a guy in an excavator move parking cones by putting a tooth through the ring on top. And I've actually done that. I don't know if our backhoe would be able to do it, but I used to be able to flip a quarter out the back window of a backhoe and pick it up with a bucket. Okay, Victor asks, again, you've answered this before many times, but when you do use boom up, hold your load, and boom down and hold your load, or when do you use boom up? Okay, so if I want the piece, or if they want the piece to stay an even distance off the ground or off the deck, or they just want it to travel laterally away from me and maintain its elevation, then I will boom down and cable up. And the signal for that is this. So this is boom down, and if they want you to boom down and cable up, then that's the signal for it. And what that'll do is it will take the piece, keep it the same height, roughly the same height off the ground or whatever, and move it directly away from the crane. If they want the piece to come closer to me and maintain the same height, then they will give me boom up and cable down. And they call it boom up, hold your load, boom down, hold your load, but it's really just boom up, cable down. And the signal for boom up is this, and then this is boom up and cable down. Linda Sherman, last thing you want on a lift is excitement. That's a fact. Motorhead One says boom hoist brakes locked by a mechanical dog. On friction cranes, when you're on the hydros, on mine, it's not a mechanical. It's friction discs inside the winch. Motorhead One multi-rig is scary. That's a fact. Book Nerd Mason asks, what that crane toy thing in the back, where did you get it, is what I'm saying. This one and that one, you can order them from Tadano, and a lot of times you can find them on eBay. Be prepared to shell out about anywhere from $200 to $400 for them. Tim Miller exactly said the job comes first, and joking around after the job is over. Life is too short. Von Heels, yep. Boom up and down is normally preferable to boom in and boom out. The crane that I operate, you have to do certain procedures before you can telescope with a load or retract with a load. It says right in the book, as long as those procedures are met, there's actually a chart in the load charts for telescoping and retracting with a load. So I can live boom a particular section on that crane with a load on it, as long as it's within that chart and within the capacity of the crane. A lot of cranes you can't, and it's typically not a good habit to be in anyway, because it's really hard on your wear pads and boom sections. Brody Harrison, hello, I'm new. What is this stream? Not trying to be cheeky. Welcome to the channel. It's a crane channel. We're just talking. We might talk about everything from trucks to cranes to heavy equipment to whatever. But tonight it's been pretty focused on cranes and construction. And that's what this channel is about. It's cranes and construction. A little bit of fun here and there, some learning, and whatever else we decide to mix in with it. Shane Davis, did you ever run lattice boom crawlers, and do you like them? I've spent very little time in a lattice boom crawler. Probably so little time that I can't give you an honest answer of whether I like them or dislike them. I know if you don't have your pad perfectly level, you're fighting it the whole time. But other than that, they excel in what they're designed for, and that's to be on a job moving around and picking stuff. Where these all-terrain cranes, like the one I operate, it excels in mobilization. Being able to get from one place down the road to another place, set up and pick up heavy stuff and move it around. Nathaniel Lee asks, where are Tadano made? Okay, so the all-terrain cranes are built in Germany. The rough terrain cranes, which is what this is over here, it's a die-cast rough terrain, they are made in Japan. Their tracked hydraulic cranes are made in the United States. They build trucks. They build boom trucks. Tadano is literally a global company. They've got manufacturing plants in the United States, Germany, Japan, and probably a handful of other places. Tim Miller, I would really like to put myself in a Tadano 600G-8 if it ever gets on the market. That's a 600-ton capacity, actually 660 U.S. ton. But we'll see. I don't want to own one. I don't want to operate one all the time because logistically they'd be a nightmare. It's something like 384,000 pounds of counterweight that they put on. if I'm shooting all this off the top of my head, I think it's 450 foot of tip height, maximum tip height, a lot of jib, all that good stuff. So logistically, they're a nightmare, and as most big cranes are. But I would love to see one in person and operate it. Book Nerd Mason's heading out. Well, thanks for watching for a little while. Andy B, I have not had to change the wear pads on the 200. Motorhead Terex. Yep, Terex D-Mag sold to them. Sold their ATs and crawler division. And I met a guy over the weekend. This is kind of pretty exciting news. I can't believe I'm just now getting around to talking about it. But down at the American Royal, since the guy from Bullhorn Barbecue works for Tadano America, he had some Tadano reps there, had a Tadano rep there. And I met the vice president of sales for Tadano America. And we had a great conversation. Great guy. We stood there and talked for probably 45 minutes or so when there was 100 other people around us. And, we kind of just got caught up on our own conversation. It was Mike, Ken, and myself talking. And Ken is the vice president of sales for Tadano America. But he has offered to help however he can in spreading the trades message and getting people interested in the trades, helping with the channel. He told me before we left, he definitely wants to keep in touch. And so I would imagine we may see something evolve from that on the channel, incorporating more support from Tadano into the channel. So it's exciting news. And it kind of blows my mind that this all started from a friend of mine saying, hey, you need to take a camera to work with you. So let's see. Von Heel, something no videos I've seen convey is just how sketchy it feels to move any piece of equipment with a load on it. I can't do that with the 200 ton. Our 80-4 has a pick and carry feature on it. So as long as the boom is pinned over the rear, you have it in a certain configuration, you can raise your outriggers up and you can actually drive the carrier from the upper cab. And that is something that is not common on an all-terrain crane. That's common on an RT, which is a rough terrain, which is what that is back there, but it's not common on an all-terrain. And pick and carry on any crane, it can be sketchy because you're introducing a lot of opportunity for dynamic loading. Hopefully I'm not missing a bunch of stuff. Good Indian says hello. Hello to Good Indian. Isaac Hillstrom, I inspected an LR 1600 2 days ago from Mammut. Was a beast. Those are big rigs. Tim Miller asks, have I ever had a cable failure? No. I have been really close to a Broderson IC200 that about dumped its load because of a cable failure, because they were working with virtually zero headroom. Had to get this piece. I mean, it was inside a building, literally inches to move this thing around, and it got two blocked pretty hard and almost broke the rope on it. And I wasn't sitting in the seat, but I was standing behind it, and I heard the rope pop. And I looked up the back of the boom, and I told the guys, you better get that on the ground now, because it was close to going. I have had a sling break before with about 53,000 pounds on it. Fortunately, I had short boom. I was only running about 58 feet of boom, so I didn't have a whole lot of boom deflection in the crane. If I would have been running 110 feet of boom, then it probably would have shot my block up in the air about 20 feet. But I was running a short boom, short radius, and I had a sling break with about 53,000 on it. The block jumped up about 2.5 feet. It kind of jacked my rope up on the winches. So I had to get out and inspect everything, replace rigging, regroup on that part of it. And then I also had to run boom out and get my rope straightened back out on the winches. Shane Davis, I have seen that crane. If you guys are on Instagram, Heavy Lift Productions, he's also on Facebook, but Heavy Lift Productions posts a lot of pictures of that big mammoth crawler. I think it's Mammoth's crawler that's on that job, but Heavy Lift Productions is one you guys need to watch out for on Instagram and Facebook. David Dragoni suggesting someone drove that high-speed 180G to you from Canada. Yeah, I didn't drive it down from Canada. Someone definitely brought it to us. Yep, Motorhead 1 hit it right there, 2 block. Mr. Elephant, I don't just make everybody a moderator, buddy. Sorry. Von Heel said, my only experience with pick and carry is in heavy equipment, but you feel so much worse than it looks like from the outside. Then even when I'm sitting in that crane with a lot of boom ran out and boom down, I made some picks the other day that I was at a 155-foot radius with 2 counterweights on, and it feels sketchy, and that boom looks pretty flat. I think I was boomed down to about, I don't remember what that was, 20-some degrees. And it looks worse from in the cab than what it does from outside the crane, I think. Motorhead 1 says blocks sometimes come into the seat. I've heard of that. Okay, so Alex Williamson's Blind Adventures asks, what kind of tire configuration does an all-terrain crane have versus a rough terrain? An all-terrain typically has 10 pretty large tires on it. They're 4.5 feet in diameter, about 2 feet wide, and it'll have 10 of them under the carrier. A rough terrain crane typically has 4 really big tires. They're typically around 6 feet tall, 5.5 feet tall, and close to 3 feet wide, designed for running off-road, and they can't travel down the highway. They have to be loaded on a truck. An all-terrain crane can travel down the highway. R. Weiss Rocks, how are you doing tonight? Says, since that failure, I'm certain that you have spare underwear in your cab just in case. I don't keep any spare britches with me. Tyler Greenhill, Maxim 31,000. Oh, that's the one that's on Heavy Lifts Production. Yeah, that Maxim 31,000, or that Manitowoc 31,000 is a big one. Skinny McKinney, the rig that Manitowoc custom built, or that Mammut custom built, I don't remember what that one is, but it is enormous. They've got some that use shipping containers full of ballast for counterweight. Motorhead 1, that is a fact. So hydro rigs are too slow on steel erecting. And I set bridge beams for a guy, and he wanted me to set his deck pieces on while he was reconfiguring his lattice boom crane. And I was picking these deck pieces as fast as I could swing them over there. He's like, why is that thing going so slow? I said, this is as fast as this crane operates. He said, why is it so slow? I said, it's slow because it's strong and it's heavy. I said, your crane might be faster, but I can pick your crane up with this crane. And then it kind of sunk in when I explained to him that, hey, this crane might be slow, but you know, if he brought his crane over close enough to me, I could pick his crane up and set it out there on those bridge beams. Yes. Okay.
I lost my sound and I can't figure out. I didn't do anything to it. It just stopped.
Okay. I'll be done in about 20 minutes, unless you need me to cut it short so I can fix your sound on your TV.
Same over here.
Okay. Our Weiss Rock. Last week we made one of our big 2 lifts with a Terex AC 500. That's a pretty big rig. Skelly Cleggs, what's the link for? Okay, I'm not sure what you're asking. Is this where you can talk? I don't know. Motorhead 1, set much steel and friction link belt. Those things are fast. Michael asked a good question. He said, I watched some towing YouTube videos. What is your thought on these new rotator wreckers becoming basically cranes? If they approach it like Ron Pratt and like Trent has, those guys are very safe, and I would tandem pick with Trent or Ron Pratt any day because those guys are very safe with what they're doing. However, the OSHA standard states that if a tow truck or a rotator is being used to hoist anything other than an automobile from an accident, they are subject to crane certification requirements. So they're opening themselves up to pretty stiff penalties if they're picking things other than clearing an accident. It's defined right there in the OSHA standard. I could actually look it up in this book over here and read it to you, but those rotators, if you're picking anything other than clearing automobiles from an accident scene, like say they go out and they pick up an air conditioning unit or they're picking up a shipping container or whatever, those guys operating that rotator are subject to the crane certification requirements just like any other crane operator is. Construction cronies, how are you doing, Chris? So dude just got off 20-day go of hanging sheetrock. That's a lot of sheetrock. Hope you're doing well up there in Canada. Tim Miller, what is the crane that is picking up 4 or 5 cranes with one crane on YouTube? That's Liebherr. That's one of their big crawlers. I'm not sure which crawler that is. I've seen that video, but it's been a long time ago, and that is a big machine. Michael said, I watched one out of Chicago and they have their locks removed on their hooks. Some of their picks seem sketchy. If they're on YouTube doing that kind of stuff, they're just setting themselves up for a visit. Motorhead 1, they said they're taking our jobs, and I don't disagree with that. But that you're venturing into politics. Our Weiss Rock said, did anyone see the new Saren's crane at the English Next nuclear power plant? It's called Big Carl. Mike was showing that to me Friday, and we determined that it had something like 3.5 million pounds of counterweight on it, that big Saren's crane. And they've actually got it in the works to build one twice as big in the next few years. But I think the capacity on it is the one that you're talking about is 10,300 tons. Tyler Greenhill says Liebherr 13,000, I believe. Okay, so Katris says, thoughts on the best way to deal with this? Had a crane op who was still freelancing calls after I was hands on holding it and giving signals. He tapped me in the chest when I was calling boom up. He swung left. Okay, so here's the skinny. If a crane operator is getting signals from a certified signal person, certified rigger signal person that's got his hands on the load, that crane operator better be following those signals. Unless the only time that it would be acceptable not to follow their signals is if they see something that rigger does not see that creates a safety hazard. A power line, they're going to fly it over somebody. The machine or the pick is becoming unstable. Something such as that. My thoughts on that, if a guy's got his hands on the piece and he's a certified rigger signal person and knows where that piece needs to go and what needs to happen, and he's competent, and I know he's competent, I'm following their signals to a T. If you got a guy that is bouncing a load off of you while you're signaling him, I would be all over him. How would I deal with that? We would have a discussion. Linda Sherman, how does something that heavy not disappear into the earth? I have no idea. And at some point, I think Mammut or Saren's is going to actually try to anchor a crane to the core of the earth. Not sure. Man, we have had quite the influx of just random people jumping in today, haven't we? Nerm, thanks for taking care of that. Motorhead 1 says it right there, one set of signals. Josh Wellner, late to the show, but I'm here. You got the babies to bed, I assume. R. Weisrock says, for Big Carl, they say it's 2,000 tons at 100 meters. That is insane. That is mind-boggling. Von Heel said there's almost never a reason to have someone directly under a load. There is actually in the standard, it states that it's permissible under certain lifting operations. Setting a cell phone tower is one of them, trusses, steel erection, stuff like that. Linda Sherman trolls are just a hazard of live streaming. That's a fact. John Warren, keeping me and Nerm busy. That's you guys are. You got to be on your toes tonight. Michael said the only cranes I even deal with are in our power plant, and they are trolley cranes that run along the ceiling. So like gantry cranes or overhead cranes. So watching what you do is amazing. Well, I appreciate that, and I've had people tell me that it's amazing some of the stuff we do, but I guess I just take it for granted because I do it every day. Tim Miller asked, would I like to run those big cranes on board ships? I'm not getting on board a ship. Mike has been on me, and my wife has been on me to go on a cruise, and I'm not doing it. So we went to Florida in July. I put my toes in the ocean. That was it. On land, I pretty much stay at the top of the food chain. When you get out into big water, that changes. Drew Bradley, what kind of noises make you worry while loaded? Anybody yelling or any loud bangs and pops. Sometimes the old Tadano will make some banging and popping, and what it is, and I can show you on this model more than I can show you on anything. These little pads on the bottom of the outrigger jacks, they've got kind of just like a ball and socket joint down there. And sometimes when you get deflection built up in the crane, that beam will press down and it'll actually rotate the end of that jack cylinder just ever so slightly inside that cup, and it'll make a loud bang. And it'll get your attention. Von Heels, at least in my feeling, you should try to avoid putting the load over top of people if you possibly can. Absolutely. Then I don't disagree with that. Motorhead 1, helicopter lifts are cool. I actually watched a helicopter ditch an air conditioning unit once on a job. Josh Wellner, never let go of the hook till it's above reach and going up. Motorhead 1, coffee truck horn. And John Warren, toes in the water and butt in the sand only. Josh Wellner said, I'll take you out on a boat. Best ride you'll ever have. Now, I would go out on your boat with you, Josh. I mean, I'd be okay with that. When we went to California a few years ago, and we went on this dolphin/whale watching deal, and it was a pretty sizable boat. I'd say there was probably 35 people on it, maybe 40. And I was okay with that. And here's why. In that situation, if the guy driving the boat starts doing something I don't agree with, there might be a fight that happens, but at some point I could probably take over the boat if I needed to. You get on those big cruise ships and big ocean liners and stuff, not so much. Motorhead 1 said coffee truck blew a horn into my seat and wanted to shoot him. Sparky 178, how are you doing? Said, do you recall the first lift of your career? What were your nerves like compared to several years of experience later? I don't remember what my first pick was. But nerves are when you first start out, you do a whole lot of second guessing yourself, and so nerves definitely play into it. As you gain more experience and whatnot, you get more comfortable with it. At least I get more comfortable with it, but I don't get complacent. So a lot of times what will happen, like when you see crane accidents, it's complacency. And that's some of what happens with older operators sometimes is they'll get complacent. They've done the same thing somewhere else and it's worked for them, and they might be, on different ground situations or in a different machine, and then the complacency gets them. I never want to be so comfortable in a crane that I become complacent. If that starts becoming the case, then I will change careers. I don't want to go out. I don't want my career to end on some kind of catastrophe. So if I ever get to the point that I'm becoming complacent, I'll get out of it. Lester Thompson, how are you doing? Said, hey, Jimmy, darn it, I missed 2 live streams in a row. I will watch later. Have a safe week. Catch you later. Well, thanks for popping in, Lester Thompson. D. McDonald, years ago, I watched a lattice boom crawler slinging I-beams to a couple of ironworkers. The precision was amazing. Is that a specialized field? Not really. I mean, any crane operator with a good amount of experience can fly iron. It is definitely different watching people that are very good at it versus people that aren't. The people that are catching the pieces appreciate the people that are good at it. And setting trusses is kind of the same way. A lot of the house contractors around here want us to set trusses individually. They don't want to set the whole stack up and walk them out. So when I've got a video of me setting trusses, a guy almost fell off a wall actually on it. But it's pick them and swing them as fast as you can get them there. However, the one thing I tell people when I'm setting up on a truss job or flying iron, if both people that are catching, like if there's 2 people catching a truss, if both people aren't watching it, then I stop swinging. I want both people to know that that's coming at them, and both people to have their eyes on it and ready to handle it before I get it to them. Von Heels, any sudden unsuspected noises or burning smells will get my attention in a real hurry. If something's burning, I had a cell phone charger burn up in that 200 one day, and it put me into panic mode. Linda Sherman, I live 100 yards from a beach in Florida, and I never go there. You can have the sand in your shoes and the salt in your hair. No thanks. Yeah, there's big mouths with big teeth in the ocean. Michael says, I'm ex-Navy. I was on an aircraft carrier, so not sure if that counts as being a boat. Well, thanks for your service, Michael. I would call an aircraft carrier a boat. It's just a very, very big boat. Matt Lee says the best boat ride he ever took was on an airboat during the floods. I thought I'd like to have one of those, but I don't know what I'd use it for. Alex Williamson, Blind Adventure, said, so for Carolina Cat facility that's in my area uses Elliott cranes for rentals, and I'm not familiar with the brand. Do you know anything about them? Elliott's just another manufacturer. They're not as big. They don't have as much market share as some of the other ones. Josh Wellner, he says, I'm 31 foot, but right time of the year, lobster bake on the island. We still want to go out to Maine sometime, so I'm sure at some point you may get the opportunity to take me out and make me puke over the side of your boat. Castro said, 100% I can tell you how nice it is having a great crane operator. JB98, how are you doing? Says, any interesting jobs coming up? Tomorrow we're taking a big crane to go pull some big vertical tanks, so we'll have to 2-line them. I'll grab them from the top with the main winch, and then we'll drop the auxiliary winch down the side and grab the bottom of the tank with the auxiliary winch, and then turn them horizontally and lay them on the ground. So I don't know. That might be interesting for you guys. A little two winch action. I think I've only got one other video on my channel of running the auxiliary winch. So we'll probably get some good footage of that. R. Weisrock says, you seem to really have the same mindset about safety that Ron Pratt. And that's the one I love seeing around the sites. I supervise one goal and just want everyone goes home in one piece. Our biggest fear as an operator is hurting someone. And, that safety is paramount. Safety does not come second. The tower that we did, we shut down, I don't know, 4 or 5 days in a row because the wind was just over what the manual spec'd for my wind speed for that much jib. So we shut down. It was a 2.5 hour drive from our shop to the cell phone tower site. There were several days we drove out there, boomed up without running any stick out. Wind was too high. We laid the boom back down and went back to the shop. So I don't mess with that kind of stuff. Those engineers are a lot smarter than I am. The people that designed that crane, they're a whole lot smarter than I am. And if I put that much crane boom up in the air and I'm within spec of wind speed and something happens, it's on them. If the wind speed is over spec and something happens, then it's on me. James Bergeron, how are you doing, James? Alex Williamson's Blind Adventure. So I'm going to tell you right now, Jimmy, you're going to be safer on a cruise liner than you would be on any other boat if you wanted to remain at the top of the food chain. Phil, I'm not even saying your last name there, or the last part of your name, because I used to pull that same joke in school. Any advice for a new operating engineer apprentice? Learn as much as you can. Find someone that is knowledgeable and safe, and learn as much as you can from them. Motorhead 1, thanks for stopping in. Hope you have a good evening and a safe week. Tim Miller, I would race boats at 125 on water. Lots of fun. That would be fun. Raylem CJ, how are you? He said, you guys still call the aux line or the aux winch the whip line? We do. It is the whip line. So you guys will probably hear me refer to that in the video when we're doing those tanks. Fun Hill, sketchiest thing I ever picked was a 75% filled fertilizer tank, moving liquids and push you around like you would not believe. That would be pretty sketchy. I bet you were wound up pretty tight on that one. Michael asked, do the customers understand, or do they try to push you to do the job anyways? It just depends on the customer. Those tower guys, they understood. I mean, they work with cranes every day. One guy even told me they were on a job once and the crane operator winded them out at 6 miles an hour. And that's like less than half of what the crane spec was or something. But it's, if the operator's not comfortable with it, then he's not comfortable with it. Last thing you want to do is have an operator put something up in the air that he's absolutely not comfortable with. But there's no arguing with me when it comes to the safety of the crane. If I had to shut it off or shut it down and take the crane back to our shop to ensure everybody's safety, then so be it. I've got the full support of our company's owner. And, we've had that discussion actually. And he told me, he said, you're in that crane for a reason. He said, if you're on a job that you feel like it's unsafe and that crane needs to be shut down, then you shut it down. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. Skelly Cleggs, can you not do Hangouts? Google Hangouts is no more. So it's gone. D. McDonald, that's a good question, and I'm not sure. Said, is the record of wind speed during a lift kept in the computer? I'm not sure if it data logs that. I know if you get to a certain capacity, it's 90% of your chart, it starts data logging. I'm not sure if it data logs the anemometer or not. I would assume that it does. It would be pretty easy for it to. Andy B says, sure have enjoyed the live stream tonight. I had shoulder replacement surgery Wednesday. This sure has helped pass the night away. Well, I hope you get better soon, Andy. I know shoulder surgery can be rough. I had it quite a while back, but it wasn't a replacement. I had what they call impingement syndrome, and actually just had to go in and cut the end of my collarbone off. But I hope you get better soon. Don't try to push yourself too fast. Rail CJ been out of rigging for a few years. Usually tube, have you seen Dying in the Sky where they hang table off the crane and serve dinner in the air? Would you or your company ever agree to do something like that? Or even bungee jumping from your Tadano? I've seen that Dining in the Sky thing. I don't know. I mean, the insurance involved in cranes is astronomical, and then you start doing stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how that would work out. Bungee jumping, I don't know about that either. R. Weisrock said he did some research in France. They're totally out of the law. And actually, the way the standard's written is man basket work is the absolute last resort for reaching someplace on a job. It's supposed to be the absolute last resort. And I would think that dinner in the sky would qualify as man basket work. I don't know. Phil said, thank you. The operator I'm working under is a great teacher. Just the only problem is that the roofing company we work for only has a 30-ton Manitex. I feel like I'm missing out on learning stuff. All the same stuff applies to a small crane as it does a big crane. The difference is the stuff that you're dealing with is smaller scale. So learn as much as you can about that 30-ton Manitex. Setting it up on an uneven terrain, the stuff that you have to do to get it level. Just learn as much as you can. And if you get experience in a 30-ton Manitex, then you can apply that same experience to a 100-ton AT and just evolve with it as your career evolves. Josh Wellner says, I worked under a 30-ton boom truck doing tree work. There's one guy who runs the job, and it's not the guy in a tree or on the ground. Just saying. That's a fact. If I'm doing a tree job, I dictate how big the pieces are cut and in what order it comes down. James Bergeron says he's doing good. Just got inside from working in the shop. What I was working on took me a lot longer than I thought it would. That typically happens. Matt Lee says having an owner who backs you up like that is invaluable. Having the ability without worrying about your job is a great owner to work with. And I don't worry about my job, even if I wasn't working where I was at. If it pertains to someone's safety, I would rather get fired than get someone hurt or killed. Shane Davis, what is the proper way to run new rope from sheave to drum? So like taking it off of the new spool onto the drum, or like parting up your block, or I'm not sure what you're asking there. Nerm says, have a good one. Time for the old man bed. Thanks for stopping in, Nerm. I know you were busy tonight, and I appreciate it, sir. Mike Manford said, yeah, I'm back. Phil says, yeah, if we aren't pressed for time, he's let me run it. I'm local 324. My classes this winter are RT forklift and basic crane, so I'm very excited for that. If I can help you with anything, shoot me an email. I'll do what I can. Von Heels makes a very good point. Personal PSA, public safety announcement. Please give heavy trucks, cranes plenty of space. I have seen too many rigs almost put into a ditch because of people crowding them or cutting them off. Here's the thing. If I'm driving down the highway, I don't yield to let people on the highway. That crane is too big to be changing lanes all the time and doing whatnot. So if you see a big crane in the right lane and you're trying to merge onto the highway, you better boogie and get in front of them or slow down and get behind them. I don't get over. And people probably think I'm a jerk, but I don't get over because it puts everybody else at risk that's on the highway with me. If I'm on a 2-lane road, I take my whole lane plus some. So people coming at me, they adjust accordingly. I don't get right on the edge of the asphalt because that asphalt can break away and put you in the ditch. All right, everybody. It has been over 2 hours, and evidently our TV upstairs has no sound, and my wife is trying to watch something that has no sound, so I get to go fix that. But what am I going to put up next? It'll probably be some bridge stuff. We'll probably do some bridge footage next, and then maybe some more tower footage. The tanks that we're going to do tomorrow, I'll sneak that in there somewhere. It's not going to be like the typical tank videos I've got on my other videos. So, that'll be good ones to watch. If you guys wouldn't mind, and I typically don't ask you guys to do much, I still can't believe that tower video that I put up didn't generate more views than what it has. If you guys wouldn't mind going back and sharing that video, I would like to see that video reach its potential. I think that's one of the better videos I've put up on here. And it really showcases what those tower guys are doing when they're up there. So if you guys wouldn't mind going back to that tower video, the one that's titled Acrophobia and then some other stuff, and giving that a share on social media. If you're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and save it to your liked videos, because YouTube uses that kind of stuff to determine where it puts those videos out. So that's why I said I typically don't ask you guys much, but I feel like that video is worth more than 3,000 views. And it's not about the money. It's just I think it's neat. I think more people need to see it. So hope I don't miss anybody here, but okay. So we've been a little over 2 hours. Thanks again, everybody, for being part of this. This would not be what it is without all of you guys. If there's something you want to see, I'll try to get it out there. Just let me know in some comments or shoot me an email. We'll see what I edit next, and I'll try to surprise you guys. Oh, I still got that generator footage I got to go back and throw out. So I've got more footage of that. So anyway, I hope you guys all have a fantastic and safe week. We'll do this again in another, 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks seems to be pretty decent. 3 weeks, once a month isn't too bad. You guys had great questions tonight. So anyway, again, I appreciate all you guys. Have a safe week. With that, Two Top Cranes out.